Sing number 660, There Is a Habitation. We'll sing the first, second, and fourth verses. There's a habitation built by the living God for every nation to sing that grand uphold. Song will be the first and last verses of number 677.
So I want you to picture a box. Boxes are used for all sorts of things, but they're especially useful for when you're moving from one place to another. You know, boxes are useful for storing things, but when you pack, you want to stay organized. So you may put your toys in one box, and you may put your books in another box. You keep your kitchen stuff from the living room stuff. And when you're organizing, you have to make sure you have the right size box for the right stuff. You know, you can't put something really big in a really small box. And that's what we try to do sometimes with God. We try to store God away in a box. We try to make him smaller than he is. We say, you know, God can't do that. Or there's no use in me praying for that because God isn't going to help me with that. When we do that, we're putting God in a box. And we're storing him away in a place that he doesn't fit. Because God is so big and powerful. The biggest box in the world can't hold God because of how big he is. Psalms 113, 4-6 says, God is higher than anything and anyone, outshining everything you can see in the skies. Who can compare with God, our God, so majestically enthroned, surveying his magnificent heavens and earth? This verse really shows the power that God has. You know, who can compare with our God? It says he outshines everything you see in the skies. God is so big. If we think about the concept of light, light shines throughout the entire universe so that we can all see. The speed of light is over 600 million miles per hour, and light reflects off of everything so that we can see in color. The concept of light is the most complex, crazy thing that I can even think of, and God created it in 4 words. He created the entire concept out of thin air just by saying, let there be light. If you ever doubt the power that God has, just read the first chapter of the Bible, and you can see the power that God has. But we tend to forget what God can still do in our lives. You know, we go through our day not giving any credit to the Lord. Who should be credited for everything that we have? This past Saturday, I went whitewater rafting with some of the guys in the youth group. And after we were done risking our lives in the water, we went to Zaxby's, and Chris came to some of the guys and he said, I want you to kind of make an analogy for what we just did. He said, I want you to compare something, compare us rafting down the rapids to something spiritual. And Braden McNabb was the first one to say something. And he instantly said, oh, I know, what if Jesus was the paddle? And then that was the whole analogy. And I know Braden was just joking, but the more I thought about the analogy that he came up with, the more I realized it kind of fits into my lesson. You know, what if Jesus was the paddle? And as we go through our lives, as we go through these rapids, you know, we give so much credit to ourselves for us getting down there safely. You know what? We don't give credit to the paddle. You know, without the paddle, we probably would have flipped over and just drowned. But with our paddle, we can navigate through the water safely. Just like this with Jesus. You know, we have all these things, but without Jesus, none of it would have happened. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. We can't just put our paddle in a box, because then we can't get through the rapids in our life. You know, we don't give him credit for what he's done for us and that he still does for us. So let's not put God in a box, because our God is so big, and he is the reason that we are so blessed today. So tonight, if you are struggling with something and need prayers, or if you want to come and be baptized for the remission of your sins, you can come now as we stand and as we sing.
There's a stranger upon the wall, glad him in. He has been there all before, glad him in, there he is gone, glad him in.
Please bow. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this wonderful day you've given us, Lord. And I thank you for this Son you've given us to die on the cross for us. And I thank you for all the food you bless us with, Lord, and letting us come here and worship you in this country we have. And I thank you for everything you've given us. In Jesus' name, amen.
right, well, good evening, everyone. It's good to see everyone out this evening. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I kind of wondered which side I was going to set the podium up on, and we got people in here even on the front on both sides, so I'm not smart enough like some of these guys just to go away and walk away from their notes and such. My brain doesn't work that way, so I'll stay here. It kind of does look like the parting of the Red Sea right through here, but I'll probably stay around here somewhere close just for my memory as much as anything. Chris taught last week, and he did a fantastic job. If you didn't catch that lesson, and you should catch all these lessons, but definitely go back and listen to that. It was a really good lesson. His topic was equipped to mentor our youth. So you got Chris, and he's a self-proclaimed young guy, as he put it last week. And my topic is equipped to serve our older members. So I'll let you draw your own inferences. Patrick Jones has already been giving me grief this evening about that, and at least he called me a middle-aged man, so I'm happy with that. I'll take it. I'll say one other thing, too. I'm going to refer to older members and younger members and such at different points in here. I'm not going to try to put operational definitions on that. If you consider yourself an older member, you do. If you consider yourself a younger member, you do. But hopefully you can draw some lessons either way tonight. So first I want to talk about why serving our older members matters. Why should you care about this topic? First and foremost, it's a topic that's in line with the teachings of Scripture. Older members have earned some level of respect, some level of special treatment according to Scripture. Paul tells Timothy as much in 1 Timothy 5, where he tells him to treat older men differently. Specifically, he talks about encouraging them and also encouraging older women as mothers. He says, "Do not rebuke an older man, but encourage him as you would a father, younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, younger women as sisters, in all purity. Honor widows who are truly widows." Note the younger ones are to be treated as brothers and sisters. If you have a relation, if you have a sibling, you know how that relationship is between you and your sibling, and then you know how your relationship is between you and your parents. And even to this day, I'll be 50 in October, and to this day, conversations with my brother are quite different than conversations with my parents. My parents raised me. They've definitely earned a level of respect for putting all the effort that they did over those many years. There's that degree of respect that our parents have earned because of the sacrifices that they made. And Paul tells Timothy to extend that kind of respect to older members in general and treating older women as mothers. Secondly, Scripture is clear that we should honor older members. Leviticus 19:32 says, "You shall stand up before the gray head and honor the face of an old man, and you shall fear your God. I am the Lord." It makes clear that we should respect and honor older folks, and that's punctuated with an "I am the Lord" statement. He's saying, this is important, listen to me, do what I am saying here. Next, also continuing the thought, why would you care from a scriptural perspective? When we make time to build bonds with our older brothers and sisters in Christ, opportunities are created in which they can share their wisdom. And several scriptures make very clear that we would be wise, younger members, if you consider yourself in that group, younger members would be wise to seek that wisdom out. Scriptures such as Job 12:12, "Wisdom belongs to the aged and understanding to the old." Job 32:7, "Those who are older should speak, for wisdom comes with age." Now, clearly, if we want to get more wisdom or understanding, the inference from those passages are that we should go seek that out from our older folks. 1 Kings 12, verse 6 makes clear that Solomon actually checked with the older folks and got their input before he made decisions about the kingdom of Israel. And if it's good enough for the wisest man who ever walked the face of this earth, save our Lord himself, to go do that, it's probably good enough for us to take a lesson from that and do the same. Titus chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. Paul tells Titus that older women should teach younger women, and certainly that could happen in a class here, like a ladies' class or something like that, but there's no substitute for the one-on-one kind of time that you might get together if you make opportunities for it in these smaller settings. So what can we draw from this? Younger folks ought to put themselves in a position to be able to draw on the wisdom of older folks, and finding ways to be of service to them creates opportunities to do just that. I want to talk about it from some other perspectives as well. Scripture alone ought to be enough for us to make that decision to want to serve our older members, but there's just statistical reasons that we should also consider. Let's see here. As you can see on the slide, about 1/4 of adults age 65 and up are considered socially isolated. What does that mean? It's a lack of social contacts, relationships, or support from others. The National Institute on Aging defines social isolation as having few people to interact with regularly. And what contributes to that? Some of the factors are up there, but the older someone is, the more likely they are to live alone. And they're also more likely to have lost family or friends that might have otherwise been checking on them. Today's society is far more mobile than those of the past, just a generation or two ago even. Children are more likely to move on to other geographies, and older folks are less likely to have close family as they were in the past, to be able to check on them regularly. Family sizes themselves are even smaller than they have been historically. So in part, there's just less children to be around to check on parents. So some of the things that might have worked in the past may not work so well anymore. If folks have chronic illness or hearing loss, those kinds of things, they're less likely to venture out. So they have less people that they interact with. So you might say, okay, well, they're isolated. Well, what's the big deal with that? Maybe some people just like to be alone, and that's okay. Well, those are tied to health risks as well. Social isolation is associated with serious health risk. 50% increased risk of dementia, 29% increased risk of heart disease, and 32% increased risk of stroke, according to the CDC. So in essence, the physical well-being of your brothers and sisters is at stake here. As people age, that circle of contacts they have can get smaller and smaller. It tends to go that way. And even some of their friends experience some of these challenges that we're talking about here. It's not easy to maintain a home and do the repairs and things like that are necessary to keep things in working order. And some of our older folks might need a little help to maintain their independence, to be able to live where they want to live as they age. Additionally, there are some benefits of serving our older members that we should think about. First, it helps combat feelings of loneliness or isolation. When I've done some things around the house for some older members here and at other places, a lot of times we spend more time just sitting around and talking than I actually do working on the thing I came there for. And that's great, right? It combats those feelings just by having those conversations and deepening those bonds, which is the second point. It builds bonds across generations of Christians. You get to know people when you have those kinds of interactions. They see that you care, and that strengthens the connections between God's people. It stimulates just personal growth in general. As a younger person, you might not give a lot of thought to the challenges that older people face. I know I didn't think a whole lot about back pain until I started having it and what that does. And you just don't think about a lot of these things. But when you see them, when you go and experience that, when you go to someone's house, maybe you might see them having difficulty getting up some stairs somewhere, things like that. It helps you develop an awareness of the daily challenges that they may have. And it helps you kind of grow and mature and be a little more empathetic to some of those challenges as well. And you might as well become an example for others. Who knows, maybe a neighbor sees you doing some things over there to help out, and that's good. That's a way to show that we care about our members here at Walter Hill. Serving brothers and sisters in this way is living out your faith. It is a real kind of sense of purpose. It's a practical way to live out your faith and show that you care. Can even honor the legacy of people who have spent so many years in service to the Lord in the church. So in summary, helping our older members embodies the golden rule. Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. So whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets. I thought about some different scriptural passages to try to help guide the topic as we think about some lessons that we can learn from Scripture in serving our older members. The book of Ruth came to mind. It's probably not one that comes to mind instantly, but it's just one of those that has so many lessons that is applicable to this topic. So we're going to look at the book of Ruth tonight a good bit. The scriptures will generally be up here, but if you want to be turning there in your Bible, that's generally where we're going to be spending a good deal of time. And by the way, we've got enough to go as long as I go tonight, but feel free to ask questions, anything like that you may have along the way. So to recap, I'm not going to read all of Ruth 1, but I'll just start with a recap of what went on in the book of Ruth in the first chapter. So you have Elimelech and Naomi and their sons. They're all Jews. They live in Bethlehem. And they decide that, because of this great famine in Bethlehem, that they're going to relocate to Moab, which couldn't be an easy decision in itself given the Israelites' thoughts of Moab. But setting that aside, they decide to relocate to Moab. So, and Elimelech, the husband, the patriarch of this family group, he dies there in Moab. And then verses 4 and 5, we read that Naomi's sons take Moabite wives while they're still there. So you've got Naomi, you've got her two sons, and they marry Moabite wives. But then the sons themselves also pass away. So you've got Naomi and two daughters-in-law remaining. They didn't have any children. So it's just the three of them. And then verses 6 through 14, Naomi decides to return to Judah, and she tells her Moabite daughters-in-law that their best option is to just stay behind. Stay here in Moab. Orpah, who is one of her daughters-in-law, chooses to do just that. She stays behind. She takes Naomi's suggestion here and stays behind. Ruth, however, her response is recorded in the first chapter, beginning with the 15th verse. I'm going to go grab my water for a minute because I'll be reading for a while. It says there in Ruth chapter 1, verse 15, and Naomi said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you." And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more. So the two of them went on until they came to Bethlehem. And when they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women said, "Is this Naomi?" She said to them, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi, when the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?" So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law with her, who returned from the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of barley harvest. In these verses, in the latter part of the first chapter, Ruth makes this commitment to Naomi. She's not going to leave her mother-in-law without anyone to care for, either in a foreign land or on the long journey home by herself, or once she gets home. Ruth says, "I'm committed. I'm going to be here with you." Let's continue reading a little bit in chapter 2. We're going to read the first 2 verses in chapter 2, and then we'll skip down to verse 17. Now Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him in whose sight I shall find favor." And she said to her, "Go, my daughter." And then skipping ahead to verse 17. So Ruth gleaned in the field until evening. Then she beat out what they had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley, and she took it up and went into the city. Her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also brought out and gave her what food she had left over after being satisfied. Let's examine the story of Ruth and see what we can take away from this, thinking about how we can care for our older members. Couple things to mention at the outset. First, a lot of these lessons that I'll pull up, I know that a lot of you are already putting these things into practice. I've made a couple calls just in the last couple weeks where I'd planned to go somewhere to do something, and I've heard, well, so-and-so's already been over here and done that. They've already taken care of that for me, so you don't have to come over here. And so I know some of these things are already being done, and I'm very appreciative that people are doing that. Secondly, I'm not going to get into whether Naomi qualified as elderly. I mean, we could make inferences one way or the other, but she was definitely well enough, I guess, to make that journey all the way back. But not going to get into that. That's not really my point. I think the takeaways from the lessons from the book of Ruth are valid regardless of whether that is the case or not. So first I want to think about some of these takeaways and what we can do specifically. So if you consider yourself a younger member, or maybe not in the older member category, however you want to put that, what can you do? So first, I think one of the lessons we can draw is starting from a foundation of selflessness and pure motives. Ruth was a Moabite. She had nothing to gain by staying with Naomi, a Jew. From a logical perspective, Ruth's future seemed to be best if she would have just stayed in Moab when all this happened, because she could kind of restart her life. She didn't have any kids or anything like that. She could just stay there in her own homeland and restart her life from scratch. But she makes that statement that she makes in the latter part of chapter 1 about her dedication to Naomi. So all that we can assume then is that Ruth put the interest of Naomi above her own, and that her motives for doing so were selfless. So I think that's one lesson that we can take away from here. Another lesson that younger members can take away, Ruth is an example of loyalty and commitment. That passage in chapter 1, verses 16 through 18, where you go, I'll go, where you stay, I'll stay, your God will be my God, etc. That passage is such a level of commitment that's expressed there that it's often read in weddings because it's such a deep commitment that Ruth expresses. I suppose for a lot of our older folks, it'd be nice if someone just called and checked in on them once in a while. Just to have someone that had that kind of minimal level of commitment. And maybe that's a thing that you can do. Just check in someone regularly. We have all these great mobile devices and such now. It's easy to pop a reminder into the phone and say, remind me to check in on so-and-so, that kind of thing. Let's take advantage of that. So that's one simple, very practical thing that we can do. Remember, our older folks are less likely these days to have someone who's able to check in on them. So they may have lost a spouse. Their kids may not live nearby, those kinds of things. So it's important that somebody do what they can and show that Christian people still care about them and make sure we're combating that loneliness and isolation. Thirdly, Ruth provided not only food on the table for Naomi, but she also provided emotional support and companionship. I think about Naomi's state and what you can infer of where her mind was You know, when she comes back to Bethlehem, what she say, don't call me Naomi. And what the words mean is important there. The word Naomi, that name means pleasant. And she says, call me Mara, which that name means bitter. She says, don't call me pleasant, call me bitter, in essence, is what she's saying, because God has taken everything away from me, and she's essentially blaming God. So this is by the time they get back to Bethlehem when she's saying all that stuff. You imagine she was a great traveling companion on the way for Ruth? If that's how she is at that time, then she's probably rather bitter along the way, and, you know, Ruth's hearing about it and such, yet she's all the way back, she comes all the way back with Naomi. And here's Naomi, who's a self-described bitter person. Well, can you imagine how bitter she might be if not only her husband died, both of her sons died, she's got no grandchildren, and both the daughter-in-laws had left her all by herself? How bitter she would be then. I mean, if anybody had a reason to be bitter, I suppose it was probably her, but she would have just been beyond bitter then. So I might be reading into it too much, but I suppose that Ruth probably had to endure a great deal of woe is me type things from Naomi. And again, Naomi, if anyone had a right to be bitter, it'd probably be her. But Ruth, even in all that, she provided that kind of emotional support and companionship for Naomi. Those of us who aren't quite in the older member age category, if you don't consider yourself there, you're not. But those of us that are in that bracket would probably do well to remember that those who are probably suffered through some pretty tough life experiences. Some of the things that we've already talked about a little bit, they've just been statistically even more likely to have gone through that. But maybe even some rather recently, who knows? But those things can get them down. And you know, they may have gone through challenges that are just difficult for us to comprehend because maybe we haven't walked in those shoes a great deal yet. So you can either do nothing about that and just say, well, I'll leave them alone and let them have their space and hopefully they'll work themselves out of that. Or maybe we can try to emulate this example from Ruth and act selflessly and out of pure motives and be there for them and help them as best as we can. So when you do that, younger people, if you're trying to help out some of our older folks and they're a little bitter, extend some grace. Maybe they've just gone through some really difficult things that are kind of hard for us to relate with, and maybe we need to extend some grace as we try to provide that emotional support and companionship. What else can we do? Do the work that needs to be done. Ruth was a very good example of this. Her own labor in the fields ensured that both she and Naomi were provided for. Chapter 2 and verse 17, did you note what it said that she did there? She labored in the fields until evening. She was no stranger to hard work and long hours. She was willing to put those in. You know, the Apostle Paul is explicit to Timothy in 1 Timothy 5 about how provisions in these matters should be taken care of, and that does begin with families. But that doesn't mean that the church has no responsibility whatsoever. Those are two, kind of related but separate things. We have a responsibility for doing what we can when it's needed. And so that admonition in 1 Timothy 5 doesn't relieve us as individual members of the church for looking after the needs of our brothers and sisters, especially that our older members may have. The example of Ruth is even more compelling when we factor in that she did all this work after the death of her husband. So she did all this stuff. I mean, it's quite an accomplishment in itself, or quite impressive that she would have worked this hard, but she did this after her own husband's death. And she did this in a foreign land. She wasn't an Israelite. She was a Moabite. She was someone from an idol-worshiping land that had no fear of God as far as Israel was concerned. yet she's there and she's putting in the time to do the work that needs to be done around people, some of whom may have looked down upon her. In our case, we might actually be able to do some things, younger members might be able to do some things that Ruth wasn't able to do. Maybe you have kids at home, and there's not a lot more you can do to make older folks happy than bring some kids around, put a little energy into their lives. So you might be able to do things in doing some of these things that Ruth wasn't even able to do in this case. Another takeaway, younger members, that you can draw from this lesson is to respect the wisdom and experience of older folks. We didn't read in chapter 3 and forward the story of Ruth or even talk about that, but of course that starts to talk about where Naomi suggests, well, here's how I would approach Boaz and et cetera, and she gives her some advice on that. And Ruth respected Naomi's wisdom and experience by heeding that advice. I can imagine it's hard for older folks to feel valued in today's world. Yet we have, we just saw a scripture that talked about the wisdom that they have. I'm kind of ashamed to admit I had no idea Tom Edging held 2 patents till I learned that at his funeral. I'd love to have asked him about that. And just, you only have a limited amount of time to, learn about certain things about people, right? And there's probably a lot of other wisdom in this room that I'd love to draw upon and learn about. So we need to make it a priority to do those things. What might it do for someone who considers themselves bitter, kind of like a Naomi was, to see a younger adult following their guidance, giving them some sense of purpose, some sense of belonging, some sense of, I've kind of got something to do, a role now. So I think that could be something that we could do to encourage them. All right, older members, you're up. We did have some things that I wanted to talk to younger members about that they could do, but also, even though this lesson's about serving our older members, there's things that older members can do. And the first one is letting others help. There's no shame in asking for help. And actually, if you provide others an opportunities to serve, in that way, you're allowing them to do what God's Word tells us to do in Galatians 6:10, to help those, especially of the household of faith, as we have those opportunities. If you need something done, tell one of us deacons, let us figure out how to get that done. You don't have to take on everything around your home. None of us is as young as we used to be, as we were yesterday. We're all older. We're all a day older today. My back gives me trouble. It did not give me 10 years ago. I talked about that earlier. I start to relate to some of these aches and pains a little bit more and more, and I'm just kind of pushing the door on 50 right now. I can relate a little bit to the physical challenges of aging to some degree. Just by allowing folks to come over and help, you provide an opportunity, though, not only for them just to do what Galatians 6:10 says to do, but also to build relationships, to kind of build those relationships between generations that make us stronger people. And you can do some things when they do that. Make them cookies, make dessert, something like that. Encourage a time to sit down together and talk and get to learn, to know each other a little bit better as part of that. So you can definitely do something when it comes to that yourselves. I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit here just to make sure we get done. Secondly, I want to encourage you to share your wisdom. Naomi shared her wisdom by helping Ruth determine how to approach Boaz. I recently returned to a job that I held years ago when our kids were at home and little, and spent a lot of time building trust and relationships and things like that there, laid just a lot of long hours and things that kind of built a foundation that as I've come back, some of those relationships are paying off. I train, coach, people and mentor people in process improvement type work. Some of those people that I trained maybe 15 years ago are in some leadership positions now. And so it's nice when I come back, and I guess not having to go knock on doors so much, a lot of times they come to me, but it got me thinking about, it gives me this opportunity to share some things and some tips and tricks and how to drive process improvement. But without sharing, what good are those years of experience and wisdom if they aren't shared with others? Without that sharing, others aren't going to be any better off than you. They're just going to be struggling through that the first time, trying to figure out how to do it, and probably hit a lot of the same obstacles that you did. So, older members, share. This is the, I'm telling you, take the opportunity to share. I trust God's word, as we read in those passages earlier, when it talks about you have that wisdom to share. You can tell sometimes maybe when some of these younger folks might be going through some things that you've gone through. Maybe they're going through things and you went through something similar. Maybe you didn't even like the way that thing turned out, and you have some advice to share. Look for those opportunities to share that. And younger folks, be willing to draw on that wisdom of older members. Finally, choose joyfulness over bitterness. In the story of Ruth, we talked about Naomi. She's kind of a downer in that story. But if anybody had a reason to be bitter, it was her. Yet Ruth stood by her in spite of that bitterness. But we get the feeling that Naomi could have made it a lot easier on Ruth by avoiding that bitterness. Let's say older folks that you get some help and some young people come around, bring their kids, help you out, and you have a big time and such. But, if you're bitter, they may not want to come back so much. You're not making it easy on them, right? But if they come around, and let's say you are going through some of those difficulties in life. Let's say you are struggling. Let's say you are dealing with challenges. But you show them how to be joyful in the middle of those challenges, in the middle of those difficulties. That's the kind of thing that might give somebody kind of that flip the switch, light bulb kind of moment about how to deal with, how to handle situations like that in life. Because let's face it, the young folks don't have it easy today either. It's a difficult world to live in today. So if they see you choosing joy, that's a good study in and of itself. Joy and happiness aren't the same things. You can be a little unhappy, I guess, and still be joyful. Joy is not dependent on your circumstances, right? And so if younger folks see you doing that, you're an example to them. You can choose to be joyful instead of being bitter. We've got about 10 minutes left, so I want to turn our thoughts to some practical ways that we can serve our older members. I'm going to grab a swig of water. I've been talking a lot. Questions or comments? I don't even see anybody asleep, so that's good. Might be a few toothpicks on eyelids out there, but let's talk about some practical ways to serve our older members. This is going to be small text, so I'll try to read it for you. Apologies, I should have split that across some slides. But what I'm trying to do is show on the left side some ways our younger members can serve our older members, and on the right side, ways our older members can serve our younger members. So just reading the list, younger members, you can prep a meal and enjoy it with them. You can provide them a ride. Sometimes, again, we looked at some of those challenges that folks have, and sometimes it's just vision, being able to see, and driving becomes a little more of a hazard than it used to be. So maybe you can take them somewhere. There's Romeo lunches you might be able to take them to, or church events, or ladies' Bible classes on the Thursday nights, different things that go on at different times of year that they just might not be able to get to, or maybe can't get there safely anymore. Give them a ride. Again, you're creating opportunities to create these connections. To give them a ride to church itself, take them to doctor's appointments, to the store, things like that. You can fix something around the house. cut the grass, wash the car, do laundry, grocery shopping, all that kind of stuff. The next one on the list is technology assistance. I will say I've been around a few older folks' devices, and sometimes you need to trust us when we tell you that that thing from 1982 doesn't work anymore. But this is a huge one. Lucas, our son, used to work in a library. I don't know how old he was, maybe 15 or 16 at the time. And there was literally a weekly session where they had this device advice thing, and the little old ladies would generally be bringing their tablets and stuff to Lucas, and he would get them running, or their phones, or things like that. But you can make connections among members of the church, right? I mean, this is an opportunity for us to just help somebody out. Maybe their family does live apart from them now, and you can help them learn to use Zoom or FaceTime or something like that to stay in touch with their family. So it's just simple things. These aren't rocket science things. Next on the list, going for a walk. Maybe they're still really, good and physically active and all that. Great, take advantage of that, right? Go for a walk, play some games, bring your kids along. Write cards or have the kids write cards to them. So there's some basic ways that you can serve if you consider yourselves younger members. Older members, these are just kind of repeats of what we talked about, but allow the younger members to help and do what you can to encourage the building of these bonds. Cookies are a big deal. I've already said that once, I'm saying it again, and you'll probably see why in just a minute. I'm going to talk about cookies a little bit more. But cookies are a big deal. Just something where you sit down and eat a little something together to create that across the table conversation opportunity where people get to know each other better. And then sharing your wisdom. Trust God to give you, the right time to do that, to provide the right opportunities to share your wisdom. I'm going to talk about something that's fairly, it's near and dear to my heart. There's a couple of pictures here. I guess you can see those fairly well. We've been having some really good lessons the last few weeks. Apologies, you had to hear this one in the middle of all the good ones. But we've been talking about different ways to equip us to do different things as a congregation. Well, it's a good thing to do, and it's a good way to focus on one thing at a time to just kind of help us think about things that we might do. But also I want us to think about how we can kind of cross the equip streams. And by that, this was something that we did at a congregation where we were when our kids were in a very formidable age. And during that time, Lucas was in the Boy Scouts, and the Boy Scouts made some decisions that we didn't necessarily agree with, and we decided we were going to leave that organization. And we thought about going with Trail Life. That's when Trail Life started up, if any of you are familiar with that. It's a good program. But we kind of looked around and saw that we had a lot of young boys in the congregation. And we had some elderly folks in the congregation. We had a few widows particularly who could probably use a few things around the house. And so we said, why don't we just organize something for boys to do some work around the widows' homes and just make a little program out of it. And we'd also do things like camping and hiking and fun stuff and all that, but we probably did as many service projects like this, doing work around houses as anything. And we called it Sons of Thunder because we had a few rowdy boys. But it was great. The boys could do things like trimming bushes and cleaning the lawn and things like that. And dads got to play with chainsaws, and it was fantastic that way, right? So when I think back on what that program was doing, though, we were serving our older members, yes. Dads were there leading their families because they're working with their boys and kind of helping the boys see the practical things that need to be done around the house and to keep a place up, but also mentoring our youth. There were boys in that program whose dads weren't Christians in the home. There were boys in that program whose dads weren't in the home. And the lessons that taught all of them I remember we'd come home sometimes and Lucas would like have detailed Dana's car or something like that. We hadn't asked him to do that. And I like to think that just picking up lessons like this just opened his eyes to the stuff that needed to be done. And he's just more aware of it. And, you know, he wasn't a perfect kid, but he would do things like that from time to time. And this program was really good for that. And I've had some of these young men, as adults now, talk to me about how the lessons they learned with this impacted their lives. And so we think about equipping the streams. I'm not saying you got to go create a program to do this. You don't. You can do this without the bounds of a program. But by the same token, find the way that you can serve and help out. So I'll try to sum it up with this slide and wrap it up. We are a growing, vibrant congregation. We've got people from all ages, different backgrounds, and we've got a duty to look after and care for each other, and particularly our older members. And the Lord has definitely blessed us with a lot of resources to be able to do that here. And the admonition in Luke chapter 12 and verse 48, everyone to whom much was given of him, much will be required, I believe is applicable here. So finally at the bottom, whether you're young or old, do what you can, Romans chapter 12 and verse 6. When you can, in Galatians chapter 6 and verse 10, the best you can, Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 10. Questions or comments before we close? You got another minute or so before the bell rings, but I'm done. Thank you very much. I appreciate you.